Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Welcome everyone. Je suis Benoît Jaudoin, responsable des activités culturelles. Alors, je vous souhaite la bienvenue à cette conversation qui est organisée par le Musée des Beaux-Arts de Montréal autour de l'exposition Parallèle, une autre histoire du design, qui est une proposition de Jennifer Laurent, conservatrice des arts décoratifs et du design. Exposition qui est donc présentée ici au musée jusqu'au 28 mai. Welcome, everyone, to this conversation hosted by the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, organized around Parallel, a history of women in design, an exhibition curated by Jennifer Laurent, curator of decorative arts and design at the MMFA, an exhibition presented at the museum here until May 28th. So we're here for the second edition of the series Lunch and Chat with a Designer. Today, our chief curator, Mary-Dailey Desmarais, will have a conversation with designer Taisha Carrington, whose work is featured in the exhibition. Before we start, I would just like to acknowledge the financial contribution of the Terra Foundation for American Art, as well as our public partners, Government of Quebec, Canada Council for the Arts and the Conseil des Arts de Montréal. Just so you know, we're using right now the webinar mode of the Zoom platform. So I would ask you to communicate by using the Q&A button at the, below your screen. So to write down your questions there, I would invite you to write them down throughout the presentation and not necessarily at the end, so whenever they pop in your mind. The conversation should last about 30 to 45 minutes, and then I will have a period for me to read aloud your questions to our panelists. So now let me introduce you today's speaker. First, welcome, Taisha.
Thank you.
So Taisha Carrington is a multidisciplinary artist working in jewelry, performance, installation, and sculpture. Born in Barbados, she focuses on placemaking, adaptation, and choices that drive immigration while proposing methods for reimagining the value of Caribbean people and communities. Carrington graduated from Pratt Institute in 2018 with a BFA in jewelry design. In addition to being recognized as a CFBA Plus design graduate by the Council of Fashion Designers in America, he was chosen for New York City Jewelry Week's Once for the Future program and was finalist for the Art Jewelry Forum's Young Artist Design in 2022. Her work can be found in the collections of the Dallas Museum of Art and Montreal Stewart Program for Modern Design. So, as mentioned, this conversation will be hosted by Mary-Dailey Desmarais. Hi, Mary. Chief Curator for the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts since 2020, Mary-Dailey Desmarais oversees a multidisciplinary team dedicated to enriching, promulgating, and preserving a collection of over 45,000 artworks and objects dating from antiquity to the present. She joined the museum in 2014. She has published widely in scholarly journals, exhibition catalogs, and art magazines on subjects ranging from impressionisms to global, modern, and contemporary art. Originally from New York, she holds a PhD in art history from Yale, an MA from William College, and a BA from Stanford. So that being done, I'll pass it to you, Mary.
Merci beaucoup, Benoît. Merci à vous tous et toutes pour votre présence aujourd'hui. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us this afternoon, and especially to you, Taisha. It's really a pleasure and an honor to spend this time with you. So thank you for joining us from Barbados, where I wish I was, but I'm not.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
So I thought, just so that everybody can get to know you a little bit, it'd be really great to hear about what brought you to art making and to jewelry in particular.
So I have never known my life outside of art. It was always a thing I did. Now that I'm older and I am educated in art, I know that I was a found object sculptor from very young. Anything I can get my hands on, I was always more 3D oriented, less so 2D. I would color periodically, but I loved making things. I always loved making anything with any material I could find, random string, lint from the dryer, anything I could put together and make things I was interested in. So coming to realize I was an artist was more realization and not like finding it, not like starting it in my older years. The choice to do jewelry, however, was a little bit more practical. I started my BFA at Munson Williams Proctor Art Institute, which just renamed to Munson. And I actually started off in sculpture because I had applied to Pratt in Brooklyn for architecture. And Munson was like, hey, we can give you a scholarship, but we don't do architecture. I was like, hey, I'm very into the art, so I'll take it. And eventually I had the advice from my sculpture professor at the time, Kim Valdez. She was like, your attention to detail is so high at this scale. I think you'd really enjoy jewelry. And I had not known much about like jewelry making, I didn't know about it beyond like ultra fine jewelry or something. I didn't think I would be interested. I didn't think it gave me the space to explore material or storytelling in the way that I loved through sculpture. But I did it because I trusted her advice, and it was over from then. I committed to jewelry, and what's going to come up in my later works is the idea of it being small and transportable. So much of my work focuses on transportability because I am from somewhere else. I was like, jewelry seems like the right choice for me. I can fit a whole solo exhibition in my purse. So that seems like the direction for me to go. So that's how I ended up getting to jewelry.
I'd love to talk about, you mentioned being from someplace else. The fact that you come from Barbados is a really important part of your practice. The history of Barbados, its people, its culture. Can you talk about the place of Barbados in your practice?
Yeah, Barbados, I grew up here and I left for college. As I mentioned, which would have been in New York. That would have been my first time moving away from here for a long period of time. And there was this element of like kind of reverse culture shock when you do return to the place that you grew up in, having lived somewhere else for an extended period of time. You see it differently. You see where you fit differently. And actually, you kind of question where you do fit. You see so much difference after you've come to understand yourself more. I needed to take some time to really assess how I fit into this complex society, a post-colonial country at the time, you know, facing financial challenges as a country and having to make the decision if I want to live there or if I want to pursue my life elsewhere. And that has been a theme that has followed my work in multiple ways throughout this collection. And up until now, I still analyze this idea of the choice in migrating. And it is linked to also being a Black woman. This whole body of work started through kind of a social experiment which is, I guess now I can say was my first like long format performance. When I moved to New York, I figured at the time, 2013, it would have been safer to play the racially ambiguous card. I was going upstate New York. I wasn't sure the kind of environment. I know that I was likely to be one of the very few Black people in the space. And quite frankly, I didn't want it to affect my education. I didn't want to run the risk of, you know, any racism that might occur through grading or something that can jeopardize me. So I started wearing wigs at that time so I could mask my own hair, my afro, which was mostly the most identifiable Black feature I had. And it was for 2 years, I got the opportunity to kind of pass through the crowd, hear things, analyze life from a different perspective that was not Black. And I produced this whole body of work following that 2-year experiment. So the work that's in the exhibition is crafted with the hair that I would have gathered, my shed hair that I gathered throughout that process of which would have been under wearing the wig. I would still collect my hair, which I then produce these pieces with.
I'm actually going to put that object on the screen so that people can see it while you're talking about it. It's very interesting to me that coming from Barbados, you would have felt that as a Black woman, that would be something that you need to hide, that you felt that, you know, previous to your arrival.
Mm-hmm. It also was based on the time in America. There was unfortunately a lot of violence against Black people. And I didn't feel in immediate danger, but I just did not want to run the risk as it related to my education.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's it's just hard to hear, but I think it's also important to say that you felt that this was something that you needed to hide at that time. But I think the good thing, if I can say there was something good, is that you've made this beautiful body of work out of that experience. I'm shared it. Oh, geez. Sorry, someone's calling me. Oh, 1 second. Give me 1 minute. There we go. I'm going to now share the presentation. Is everybody seeing my screen here, the PowerPoint that I'm sharing? Yes?
Yes, we do. Yes.
Okay, great. So this is this wonderful object that we have in the exhibition, Bun Halo Headpiece from 2018. And maybe Taisha, you can just talk about this piece and how you made it and why it's important to you.
Yeah, I came to know of hair work jewelry, which is a old technique of kind of hair weaving from the Victorian era. It's called Victorian hair work jewelry. And I noticed that one of my professors introduced me to it, Karen Bachman, and I had never seen it done with Afro hair. And considering the timing of when this type of craft was popular, it was likely that there wouldn't be interest in preserving, cherishing, or using Afro hair because they were often given to loved ones. So I wanted to redo that. I didn't like that. I wanted to be a part of history and also modernize the craft to basically say, hey, we're here, we exist, and this material is of value to me. And this is all, 2018 doesn't seem that long ago, but in 2018, there was still a lot of laws in workplaces, et cetera, that, well, not laws, there were a lot of discrimination that didn't like to see Afro hair in the workplaces. And it was something that I was very familiar with here in the Caribbean, but also it was very prevalent in the US as well.
I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know that there was sort of.
Yeah, usually dreadlocks, you know, are like a no-no in the workplace, or open hair, which is just an Afro.
Yeah.
So much so that only in 2019, New York passed a law to ban the discrimination against Afro hair. Finally, in 2019. So it might not seem like that weighty of an issue, but the fact that New York went out of their way to pass a law in this very modern era would give a sense of the magnitude of the problem that people of color, Black women and men, were facing in regards to their hair.
Absolutely.
So I said, you know what, I want to use that hair. I want to change how people view it. And I'm going to make very celebratory objects using that hair and incorporating familiar craft techniques. So the hair, what you're seeing on the bun halo around the edge, the kind of yellow, is my own hair that I felted and bleached and dyed yellow. And then I encrusted it and embroidered it with citrines, quartz, peridot, pearls, and all of these small cut silk petals. I wanted to, I don't want to use the word elevate, but treat it with such high regard and say, here is a piece of fine jewelry, not in the traditional sense, but because I'm using a material that's often, at the time, was frequently condemned. And the format of it, the halo, is just super, as bold as I could think to go using Afro hair.
We're really excited to have it in the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This work, I'll stop sharing and then put something else on in a minute, but this work is part of a series, what I believe is your first collection, Woke in the Wake. And I think you have some objects around you that are also from that series. So maybe you could talk more broadly about the series and show us some of the other objects, your choice, that are part of the series.
Yeah, so I'll show you the first pieces from this series, which were earrings. And I focused first and foremost, before I got to hair pieces, I focused a lot on earrings because of how they frame the face. They're confrontational. You can't look at a person wearing something like this and not see their face right next to it. I mean, they're large, they're loud, they scream, come and talk to me, answer me a question.
Yes.
Which is what I was going for with the entire collection. I wanted to feel bold, or I wanted people to see the work and either wear it and feel extremely bold in who they were. So those are the first earrings. Oh, and I should say the reddish area is the felted hair. And then there are—
it's hair?
Yeah.
Red? Oh, wow.
The central piece.
Wow.
So there is hair in some format in all the pieces from this collection.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And then these ones, I was like, go bigger, you know, we can't get too big. These ones fit over the ear. I won't put them in now, but they fit over in the ear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I was like, as big as I get, I want to go bigger. And with these ones, that's you can see the kind of tan color.
Right.
That again is the felted hair. And me just having fun with like articulation and just crafting the objects. I was really interested in how much time I spent making these pieces. Not that that's the only validating factor in art making, but I felt like this needed time. And these pieces take about 60 hours sometimes per piece.
Wow.
This is the final pair I'll share with you. And again, these were made before the halo as well, but I guess this was me getting into hair pieces.
Right.
So I used, in this case, synthetic hair to braid and create these braided patterns.
There are pearls in it also, or at the bottom?
So at the bottom, there are freshwater pearls, peridot, citrine. Trying to remember everything right now. But again, as much like encrusting as I can do, I wanted to do. My whole aim was to make them irresistibly pretty, so that somebody would be attracted to them. And when you're now here in my realm, I can tell you this story and, you know, encourage knowledge sharing between the two of us about differences or about the fact that this is a problem existing and how it's identified.
I love that idea of using jewelry as a conversation starter, as inviting people to come and talk to you and ask you questions. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Talk in the last one you showed, the top part had almost like I don't really want to say fork, but why that choice for that top part? Or comb maybe?
It's a comb. It's a comb. So it goes right
here. Oh wow! Look at that.
But they go more like behind the ear or wherever you want to put them. But it's a comb. I was like, how can I access hair but still give maybe like an earring effect? And a comb was the solution.
I wanted to, I'm going to share my screen again because you mentioned the amount of time that it takes you to make some of these works. And I just find that the craft and the technique that you bring to all of your jewelry is so incredible. I wanted people to be able to see another collection. Hold on, what did I do this? Did I mess up this? Okay, here we go. People are seeing this, I'm assuming. Just let me know if not. But these are hand carved West Indian Wilkes shell.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the bottom, gold-plated silver with volcanic ash finish. I'm wondering if you can talk about the actual process of making these and what's that like for you?
Yeah, so these pieces are from my second collection called I Had a Dream of a New Old Caribbean. And it is kind of the celebration of me returning to Barbados and feeling a lot more comfortable in my environment and not being kind of weighed down by the still very prominent colonial remnants that is throughout the Caribbean. But finding feeling like I belong in this space and I want to celebrate this paradise that, hey, I get to live in. So part of that whole reconnecting process involved me just kind of combing the country. Literally, I would go on walking meditations any and everywhere. I would go into random places and pick fruit. I just wanted to reconnect with the space. And of course, along the way, I would collect shells. And West Indian Wilkes, it's like a black and white shell, but inside there's nacre or mother of pearl.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as a jeweler, I know about mother of pearl. And to find it there, I was like, hey, I want to use this. So I went through the challenges of extracting the mother of pearl from the Wilkes shell. And that's what you're seeing on the top one, like the kind of white flick forms.
Mm-hmm.
I would have harvested that myself from the shells. So I removed the exterior. And then the central form, the gold part, is chased. For any jewelers out there who are familiar with the processes. It's chased and then all assembled with soldering. And it was my interest in using natural materials. Again, I wasn't using hair anymore, but I was curious. I was interested in using materials that I find to be like the DNA of a space. You know, these shells, you can find here, they come from here. Mm-hmm. The second one, again, was a celebratory approach to a natural disaster that occurred in 2021. The eruption of the La Soufrière volcano on our neighboring island, St. Vincent. Mm-hmm. The ash shot so high past the atmosphere, the other sphere, mm-hmm. that it reversed direction and came to Barbados unexpectedly.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So predictions were that it would go west of the island and we're on their east, but it went so high where the wind direction changes, it came east instead and literally just dumped an entire days of ash fall onto Barbados. It was a very gloomy time. Literally the sun would not come out because the entire country was just covered in, it's like a snowstorm, but gray. Yeah. It hadn't occurred in many, many years. No one who's currently living had really seen that magnitude. There was a small event 60 years ago or so, but I collected the ash and it's abrasive. It's usually used in construction, but we had to stay inside and protect ourselves because it was this abrasive material falling from the sky. But I collected it and I was like, if it's abrasive, I can use it like sand. And of course, being an artist, I had to use it in a way that would contribute to my art. So these are based on a plant that was in my front yard my favorite plant, which became covered in the ash for, as I said, many, at that point, weeks. I couldn't see the plant anymore, but it did survive. It's been there for at least 20 years now. So it's kind of like a homage to the plant. I reproduced this form and I finished it with the ash and then gold plated it to say, you know, despite this event in this plant's history and also in my history now, you know, there's still this absolute beauty on the other end. And I've just been working through the way that environment does that to us here in the Caribbean.
Right, it's amazing because you never, looking at these, especially through the screen, you would never think that it's not obvious to see all of this incredible history that is literally embedded in the object. And I find that just amazing. And the skill that you have to make these things is so compelling. Stop this so people can see you better. I think maybe just a last question on my part before we open it up to our participants today has to do with what being in this exhibition, Parall, History of Women in Design, means to you. As you know, the exhibition brings together fantastic women designers from the late 19th century up until today. It tries to provide a more inclusive view of concept of what design is. So not just industrial design, but jewelry and embroidery and craft and textiles. We're thrilled to have you in it. You're the only Barbadian artist in the exhibition. So maybe you could talk about what that means to you.
Yeah, it means the world to me, if I could sum it up. This is I'd love to get to see the show because that would be my first time seeing the work of a Barbadian artist in a museum show. We're a small country, a small amount of people, and it's not often you get to see artists coming from Barbados. Furthermore, even the English-speaking Caribbean, I don't frequently encounter the work in any museums that I have been able to visit. So from that perspective, it means the world to me, specifically in the art jewelry field. Again, there's not an abundance of Black women practicing and on the art jewelry side. So to do the kind of work that is acknowledged and seen as important to a show like this is beyond what I could imagine my work would do. As you heard, there's a ton of story to be told. And my job as an artist is to provide an object that opens a door for those stories to be told. And to have the support of such a major museum join me in facilitating that storytelling, I can't summarize what that means to me as an artist, but to me as a person living in a small island developing state, someone living outside of a art capital, just to be able to be heard is beyond.
Well, thank you so much. We're really thrilled to have your work in the show. Is certainly a piece that stands out, and to use your term, just tells such a powerful story. I'm really grateful to you for sharing so much about your work today. Thank you. I think it'd be good if we allowed some of our participants to maybe ask you some questions. I'll turn it over to Benoit, who will lead the Q&A.
Thank you. We don't have any questions right now. So while we're waiting for questions to be written, I'll maybe, if I may, ask a question to you, Taisha. I would maybe like to hear a little bit more about your upcoming projects. What are you working on right now? What are the projects? I think you have something quite particular planned for summer.
Yeah, so since my hair jewelry collection, I've wanted to return to working with hair, but it takes time to find the way to, as the story has evolved. As I said, now we're in a different space, you know, where the idea and attitude towards hair, thankfully, has shifted. But as a material, I'd still love to work with it. But I've been exploring hair and its ability to document a human's history of where you've lived, what you've eaten, with analysis through DNA. So I'm making a large tapestry because I've been collecting hair ever since the beginning of my 20s. And I'm now wrapping up that decade of my life. And I thought a 10-year span of hair that I've collected is a document of my lived experience through immigrating temporarily, through the food I've eaten in these different places. And it will literally be a map made of hair that documents this live DNA kind of. And I'm hoping to do this every 10 years to see how I've grown as a human being living in these different environments. So that's what's next for the hair work jewelry.
So exciting. That's quite an undertaking, I have to say.
I look forward to it. I think it'll be fun.
Maybe you can talk to, sorry, is there a question, Benoit?
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask, I keep noticing, talking about your jewelry being conversation starters, I'm noticing these amazing earrings that you're wearing, and thought maybe you could talk to us about those.
Yeah, so these are fresh off the bench. I'm working on a new body of work, a summer collection. Still maintaining my interest in form, but trying my hand at just new techniques kind of, and more of a production direction, just to expand the reach of being able to tell these stories. So again, they utilize the same technique as the ones we showed earlier, which is chasing. So yeah, they're chased, super light. I'm having fun making them.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Hello.
I have a question. Je laisse Benoît. Vas-y, Benoît.
Bien sûr. Bonjour, vous êtes Huguette La Tulipe, c'est la
Oui,
personne que
c'est
j'entends?
ça,
Oui, d'accord.
Oui,
On ne vous
exactement.
voit pas, mais on vous entend très bien, alors vous pouvez poser votre question.
C'est gentil. Je voulais savoir, est-ce qu'il y a une gamme de prix dans ces beaux objets-là? C'est fantastique, on veut tous en avoir. Ou ce sont simplement des objets de collection, je pourrais dire des boucles d'oreilles, mais c'est plus que ça, c'est vraiment des objets extraordinaires. Alors, est-ce qu'il y a des prix? Do you have a price for those nice?
Oui. So
oui?
What she's asking, Taisha, she's saying there's such beautiful objects, really fantastic, really art objects, but also jewelry. But she's complimenting you in saying they're so great. She wants to buy some. So are they objects that anybody can buy? And if so, how does one buy them?
Yes, you can just contact me via email. It's just my name, Taisha Carrington @gmail.com. Or find me on Instagram or anything and just reach out. Some of the pieces are one of a kind, but some are, I do have multiples of them, or I can make multiples of them, depending on whichever one it was she's referring to. But I'd be happy to know which one, is really catching her attention. She can email me.
Great, thank you so much. And I'll just tell you, je vais vous dire, Madame La Tulipe, que si vous allez sur l'Internet, vous pouvez trouver le site web de Taisha qui vous donne aussi son courriel et les indications pour les achats, etc. Are there other questions, Benoit, that we have?
Yes, we have two, but time for one, so I'll try to merge them into one. There is one question about the status of an artist from Barbados, and another one about the experience of a young Black woman in the art world. So I guess I would merge them into the specificity of your experience in the art field, and how did you experience it? What are the challenges behind them, and what do you want us to understand about this experience?
I think initially the challenge is always knowing that your stories are very foreign, and it's not that people don't care, but the how unfamiliar they are can create significant distance in how someone connects to your work. And as an artist, you of course want people to know what you're saying and why you're saying it. I've not been deterred by it, but it's definitely something that I'm always aware of. But I've continued to try to tell these stories. It is the reality that I am in the minority in my field, but there has been significant effort, I would say, to include more Black women or artists of color, particularly in art jewelry. It's a whole other story to be based outside of these countries that are that do have a robust art environment. It calls for a lot of creativity, and for me that has been mostly through residencies. That's how I encounter people, how I grow my network, and just try my best to keep my eyes peeled for opportunities, because very often I have to go to them. They tend not to fall in my lap or around me. So that's more based on where I am, and not particularly being a woman of color, but it does factor in as well.
Well, thanks a lot for sharing this. Thanks to Mary-Dailey Desmarais for this conversation. It's been fantastic to learn about your work, Taisha.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to share the work, for having the work be a part of the show, and for having it so accessible with the digital component in the show and everything. I hope to see it in person myself.
Well, thank you so much. We really hope that you will come to Montreal. It'd be great to meet you in person. I want to thank you again for your time today. I loved speaking with you. I really learned a lot. And I want to thank you for being so generous with everybody on the call. Thank you.
Thank you so much.